All right, Shelby, welcome to the GSD Mode podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super stoked to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to have you on and really just, excited to unpack all this amazing things that you've done. I mean, from day one, you've been crushing it in this business, continue to crush it. But before we get into all the things that, you've done and are doing with your real estate career, I'm always intrigued in our guest journeys that led them here in the first place.
Yeah.
So what did you do before you got into real estate? And then what ultimately led you into getting into real estate?
Gosh, yes. Okay. So before I was in real estate, I was in the Army. I went to University of South Carolina and commissioned into being a second lieutenant, and went to my first duty station, which was in Fort Lewis, Washington, and served almost 4 years there and had the most glorious time. I was like, the Army's amazing. Like, a lot of people shit talk once you're in it, because it is, tough in a lot of ways. And I was like, what are they talking about? This is the best thing ever. And then I changed duty stations and ended up at Fort Bragg, which is has a very strong reputation, in which I believe it earns. So I was there for a little while and was doing the airborne, jumping out of airplanes type of thing. And then I just became increasingly frustrated with the restrictions. You had to put in a pass to go outside a 250-mile radius to go live your life on the weekends. And no matter how hard you worked, your promotions were based on time as opposed to competency. And I just became increasingly frustrated with the ways that my life was becoming. And so I started to look towards other options, ones that really, spoke to me in regard to freedom and the way that you can make as much money as you possibly, the world is yours, depending on how much work ethic and how smart you work. So that's kind of what led me to real estate.
Yep. Now, so, I mean, so well, then why real estate though? I mean, did you know people in real estate, or did you have friends in real estate, or an experience that was okay, I think real estate's a thing for me, or?
Love it. Yes. Okay. Yes. All the things.
Okay.
So I was at Fort Bragg for probably about 6 months when I was first introduced to Robert Kiyosaki, and not Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was the cash flow quadrant was the one that really got me, where it was you're either, employee or self-employed, business owner or an investor. And I read that and I was just dude, I'm in the wrong part of the quadrant for sure. And then I was introduced to Bigger Pockets, which got me on the investment bug. I had bought my primary residence when I was in Washington State and decided to keep it as a rental when I moved to Fort Bragg, which is in North Carolina. And at that point in time, after I stumbled on Bigger Pockets, I was like, whoa, I wonder if my property's cash flowing, which I had never even thought of before. I was just cover the bills, and it was cash flowing just a little bit, but it had appreciated a shit ton in just those few years of holding it. And I was like, yo, dude, real estate investing, this could be it. And so I just started consuming as much as possible. And when I decided to get out and I got my real estate license, the focus was to be an investor. And the agent piece was as a way to generate active income to fuel my passive. But it turned into its entire, journey of its own.
Yeah. That's so awesome. All right. So then I'm curious, because you hit it out of the gate running hard in this business. I mean, to do 48 deals your first year, and then just to continue to accelerate, the growth that you had, I mean, of more than doubling just year after year, what kind of, I got to imagine that, and maybe you always had this, I don't know, this is what I'm asking, but
yeah,
were there certain foundations that you're experiencing career in the Army, because I've never been in the military, but I got to imagine the discipline.
Dude, you look like you have been. When I was this dude's a Marine, he kills people. No, just kidding. That sounds so bad. You look like a badass.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, but with that, did that really help that foundation where it's okay, can you learn hard work, you learn discipline, you learn structure, you learn, what were some of those kind of foundations that you came into the industry with?
Yes.
That allowed to accelerate the growth that you've had?
Dude, I credit so much of what I've been able to do to my years in the military, 6 years of having certain things ingrained into me. One was getting up early. So you get up early and you get after it, make sure that you prioritize health and fitness. But other things was I was in HR within the military. So I had to oversee and manage paperwork for 700 dudes who really did not care at all about what I was doing. And it was actually like a logistical nightmare because people would be in the military, you move all the time. So people are deploying overseas, they're redeploying, they're moving duty stations, new people are coming in. And each one of these movements triggers a series of events, like whether that be awards or evaluations or orders. And so I had to track all of these moving pieces, and I had to develop systems in which I could be personally organized enough to not only track, but also follow up, stay on top of, ensure a timeliness in all of these, different moving pieces. And, I have the calendar within that, and I was briefing the command team and staying on top of all of like the subordinate command teams. And so I had to learn how to communicate with so many different people at different levels. And so all of that, which I had no idea at the time, going into real estate, I had no idea how well it would serve me, just was a very natural fit right into real estate agent life, which is chaos, right?
Yep. No, I love it. So then, all right, so let's jump into your first year. Because I mean, so many struggle in their first year. We know what the failure rate is in this industry. It's like 90% fail in the first 3 years. And to do 48 deals your first year, you jump in the game in 2018. Like what'd you do? Like, what'd you start doing out of the gate to lead that kind of volume?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to have a very large sphere of influence at my fingertips, exclusively due to the military. So because I was in HR, I made sure that before I left my job, I pulled massive rosters and I emailed everyone whether or not I was supposed to do that. And I said, thank you for allowing me to serve. Please allow me to continue to serve you in the way of real estate, and attach my business card, the whole thing. And I got a lot of hate from that, but I also got a lot of business right out the gate. And I followed up with everyone aggressively, not in the way that was, off-putting, but like I'm very assertive in my actions. And so whenever I had any sort of thing that looked like a lead, it would be consistent follow-up. That was one piece, the sphere of influence. I also had really strong core advocates, which I think is something that people don't necessarily touch on enough, maybe because everyone says your sphere of influence, like call everyone in your phone. But the thing that was different my first year is that I had people who were not just like, oh yeah, Shelby has her license, you should use her, but like just as assertively as I was promoting me and sending business my way. That was the second thing. And then the last thing was a meetup. I created a real estate meetup that did really well. I'm trying to breathe in between, give you time.
Yeah, no, I love it. So let's break that down. Okay. So outside of letting everybody know, because I want to be able to transition this from me watching and listening, that whatever their career path is, where they did before. So, okay, you start off with, before you even made the transition of messaging to let everybody know, right. Which I love that. Mm-hmm. And then and we'll kind of break down these 3 different buckets separately. Sure. So then what did that ongoing continue follow up and staying in touch to stay front of mind, with that sphere specifically?
Yeah. So that I really used social media to nurture. And that's something that I see, a lot of people are like, I'm going to use social media as my lead gen strategy. I'm like, you're a brand new agent with 123 followers. Like no one is going to seek out your content as a new source of education for the most part. However, if you do have some sort of people who are already following you, then you can cultivate and nurture and turn over business from that. So I don't know if that makes sense, the differentiation between lead nurturing and generation within socials. I did socials, and then just whenever I had someone who was interested, I had them tracked and followed up. And looking back now, it's so interesting because my first year, like I didn't fucking know what I was doing. Yeah. Like you asked me these things, like, and I'm like, looking back now, I'm like, dude, I was just desperate. And like anyone who was even remotely interested, I was fucking on their ass. You know what I mean? It wasn't science.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you're taking action, but I mean, there was some strategy behind it, it as well. And I love it. So I mean, essentially you're using your social media as like a social CRM,
Yes, exactly. And I love that because no one really wants the freaking newsletter emails, you know what I mean? That's just mass to everyone. But if you are not like creating content that's like top 10 ways to sell your house, but if you're like showing what you're doing every day, like learning about, investing, or I just did this, and just showing your day in a consistent manner that's interesting, people love that shit. They eat it up.
Yep. Love it. So then, all right. So then you had these kind of advocates, these, walking,
Totally.
talking testimonial billboards. Like what did that look like? How did you create them? How did you, I don't know if the right word is train or instruct them, to go out there and constantly be kind of headhunting for you for business?
Yeah. I think that it was due to my enthusiasm and pressure and belief that I had to make this work. Like very much back against the wall was like the energy I was putting out, which I do think there is a difference in that intensity every time. Hey, real estate is my life, I'm doing it, all the things, versus, hey, I just got my license, let me know, there's like a different intensity, and then people take it more seriously. But they were also like, it was my boyfriend at the time who was also in a unit who had access to all of these people who had the VA loan. I did a ton of VA loans my first year. And then my contractor at the time, and like everyone who he was meeting who was flipping houses or doing renovations, like they all got passed my way. But I think it all started from my level of confidence and assertiveness that I was going to fucking do it. You know what I mean?
Yep. Love it. All right. So then, then you started this meetup group.
Yeah.
Which is also, you kind of have your social network. So, but then you started an in-person one as well. What was that structured around?
Yes. So Pints and Properties, and it's still going. And it started from in 2018, my first meetup, when I had 4 people show up. And now there's 21 events throughout 11 states in the country, which is fucking really cool for me. I'm excited about it. But originally it was created just because I didn't have anyone to talk about real estate investing with. And this is where like my investor piece comes in. Like I was on Bigger Pockets, and friends on the interwebs are really cool, but there's nothing like, talking to someone in person who's going through what you're going through and like learning things together. And so I was like, man, they might not want to hang out with me and talk real estate, just with me, but maybe if I do it at like a brewery and they have a beer in their hands, they'd be like, okay, Shelby, we'll fucking hang. So that's how Pints and Properties was born. And it has grown significantly over the years and has been a consistent lead gen source for me.
Awesome. And I've got some follow-up questions there with that. But I guess my next question is, okay, so then going into year 2, where you started your team and then scaled to 120 deals, and then year 3, 300 or 230 deals. And correct me if I'm getting any of these wrong, but was that just more of, okay, doing the same things, but just doing them at a bigger scale because now you have delegation points and you have more of you doing those things? Or in those years, was there anything that changed, from a way of getting business?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So the first piece was more accurate. In those years when we had the traditional team, the millionaire real estate agent, Gary Keller model, 50-50 splits, that whole thing. The reason why we were able to continually increase is because I was able to attract killers also, in my mind, at least. There's a lot of agents who want to do stuff and just it never fucking happens. But there are some people who just grab it and run with it. So attracting the right people was one, but bigger piece even than that was I was really fortunate to bring on amazing pieces of leverage. So even by the end of my first year, I found, after 2 hires and fires, an amazing contract to close transaction coordinator who she was running her own third party, like business, a TC business at that point, working with several agents, and found her, talked to her, convinced her to come on the team as full-time in-house. I also had an operations manager who I brought on board who, and between the 2 of them, like leveraging out the contract to close and truly having leverage where you don't have to constantly worry and it eat away at your mental capacity, that piece in conjunction with having the operation, someone there to take the ideas and commit them to paper and establish actual systems and processes within your business, like the world is yours.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. No, I love that. Yeah. People don't always understand that power of leverage, but it is so powerful.
Huge. Yeah.
All right. So then, okay. So then, and again, I want to get back into some of these things. So I'll circle back to Pints and Properties because I really
Yeah.
want to break that down.
Cool.
But so okay, so you got, year one, we talked about 48 deals. You got year two, 120 deals. Year three,
Yeah.
230 deals. Now year four, looks
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you were on track to double again. But then you made a pivot about halfway through that year. Kind of
Yeah.
what was that change?
Oh, I wanted to die.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's one of the things, like, agents are talking about when they're first getting the business, they're like, oh, one day I want to start a team. And I'm like, oh gosh, maybe, but like I think the team model, especially that old school, like millionaire real estate agent, 50-50 splits model, is just like over glamorized in the beginning. And the reality of it is just like, in the beginning, it is possible to attract the people when you're super small and you're close knit. And it's like, you can do this like really tight knit machine. Sure. But the minute that you continue growing, which you will continue to attract people if you are making waves, right? But the people who are attracted to the traditional team model, in my experience, are either brand new and they don't know what they're doing, or they want handouts. And that's a generalization. It could be wrong across the, in other people's experiences, but that was just my experience with it. And so what I found is that over time, we were attracting more and more of the people who I didn't want to have to babysit.
Shelby.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but we totally froze up.
Oh no.
So I got you back there. Where and we'll edit this part out. But
okay.
Where you were at was okay, those that you attract your team are either new agents, and that's where it cut off. And then shit. We just saw you frozen on the screen.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the traditional team model, in my experience, tends to attract either new agents who don't know what they're doing, or agents who want a handout. They want to ride someone else's coattail. And I know that's a generalization. I know it's not true across the board, whatever. In my experience, when we were close knit and we were small, we were attracting the right people who it was a startup feel, like for the team, like whatever it takes. And the more that we grew and the more waves that we created, it was attracting more and more people who wanted to be a part of what we were, but didn't know like in their hearts and souls, like what it fucking took to get there. And they just, and then starts the complaining about the splits and we want. And I just got to the point where I was like, this is not fucking worth it. I want to spend my time around people who bring me energy and fucking want to kill it in life and, carry the weight of the world on their own shoulders. And that was not what we were attracting, which is what led to the decision to switch the model.
Yep. So then walk us through, what was that model switch and what does it look like now today?
Yeah. So the model switch, it was originally that 50-50 split, very traditional team where it was high leverage, high overhead. And when I was making the decision, my heart and soul are with my admin because they do everything. They're amazing, reliable, like fucking kill. I love them. So what I didn't want to do was leave them hanging. And by this point, we had several transaction coordinators. We had a lead administrator, a listing coordinator, admin assistant. We had tons of people like on staff, and I was thinking about their families and their livelihood and all that stuff. So when I realized that I didn't want to carry any of the responsibility, but I wanted my agents to still have their staff and I wanted my admin to still have their business, I went to my admin first and I said, hey guys, if you would like to start your own transaction coordinating company, your own listing coordinator, project management, your whole business, I would love to help you start your own business. And so when they said yes, which all of them did, I could go to my agents and say, hey guys, I'm not doing this for you anymore. I'm giving you 1 month of, transition time. I'm not doing this anymore, but you can still have all of the admin who you know and love and trust, but you just pay them directly. And I'm stepping out of it, like I'm out. And so what I did was I got to pick and choose what I wanted to keep, which was the fun stuff to me. And then I put the responsibility and ownership back on the shoulders of the agents. And anything that I sent out before as leads, I sent out as referrals. And then the rest of the income comes from revenue share.
Yeah. So can you walk us through, because
I talk so much. Sorry.
No, I love the model. And look, anybody that's a team leader knows the pains that you went
Bro.
through and what that
Yes.
transition is. And, I've been running my team 17 years and we have so many, I did 48 deals my first year as well. Started my team my second year, like so many of those same correlations. And then, I ran a very traditional team for about the first 10 years, and then I went to a progressive split model, to now where, it's like we have the different options. And now I even, have more leverage partnership opportunities with, other brokerages throughout the country, like all, for that leverage quote, but a lot of those same reasons. It's like, man, I'm tired of babysitting and managing these leads and QCing the process every day and, having to get involved, so, it's been some similar steps, but, what is that when you say rev share, when people are hearing this, because I know a lot of other people feel that those same frustrations. And if you don't, whatever you don't feel comfortable sharing, you don't have to share. But what does that kind of look like? What does that even mean? Because a lot of people, when they hear rev share, they just think of like EXP.
Yeah. And we happened to be at EXP, but until this change in model, EXP was just the firm that was operating in the background. Like I didn't pay attention to it at all. But I was at Keller Williams in the beginning. So I knew a little bit about profit share. And then at this point where I hadn't cared about revenue share at all, I was like, well, let me see what this is all about. And the key difference is that profit share is once all expenses are paid in a market center, whatever is left over is the profit. And that is distributed against, to whatever agents brought on other agents into the organization, right? The difference with revenue share is that it's pre-expenses. And correct me if I'm wrong, like if there's anything else you want to add in here, but basically when all of the money comes in, that is the revenue. Regardless of whether or not the company is profitable, they use that revenue to pay back the agents who are bringing on performers into the organization. Does that make sense?
Yep. Okay. So then you're with EXP.
Yeah.
There's other companies that have rev share models now that are kind of, but through there, okay. So you've almost created it where it's like, okay, it's almost like a mentorship.
Yes.
Style, coaching style, they get that guidance, but they're responsible for their own lead gen.
Yes. Well, that's the beauty of it for me, at least. It's like, damn, as a team leader, and one of the considerations when you're thinking about shutting down your traditional team is like, dude, I just spent years, blood, sweat, and tears, like building all of these systems, all of these tools and products and like videos and literally all of it. The cool thing about, I think, what I did is that I didn't have to get rid of that. I wasn't kissing it goodbye. All I did is I had all of the tools and training and systems and checklists and said, now you can have them for free. Literally, please take all of it, build your own empires, and I will help you do it.
Yep. Yeah. And I've been talking about this a lot lately on the podcast of just understanding that leverage piece, because like once you can get that and it allows you to scale, it's like my favorite quote from Andrew Carnegie was, hey, I'd rather make 1% off 100 men's efforts than 100% off my own efforts. So yeah, your margin per deal might be less, but you've got this leverage piece now where this could expand to 10,000 people in your model.
Totally. Exactly. And the cool thing about it too, because it goes back to the reason why I shut down the team to begin with, it's that we were attracting people who weren't the people who I wanted to necessarily be around every day. But with this switch in the model, we are able to absolutely attract the people who are their own fucking killers. They want to, take on the world. They want the responsibility and they, you know what I mean? And I get to say, hey, I'm not going to take any flip from you at all. Literally, here's all of my lessons learned, my tools, and here's all this extra, training and Zooms and all this shit that we do. But it's free, dude. Run with it. Go. You know what I mean?
Yep. Now, are you still, because I know, and we'll get into your investing in what you're doing there, because you own a shit ton of real profits. You're crushing it on all fronts. But, are you still in production? Are you still doing production yourself at this point?
2 seconds. Sorry, it does that sometimes.
No, we're good.
So I am not in production myself for the most part. Every once in a while, like my friend Dave Perret, he runs a really big podcast From Military to Millionaire. If he texts me and he's like, yo, Shelby, this is my best friend from the Marines, will you like list his house? Like, I'm going to say yes, you know? And then it's kind of fun too, because I'm like, oh, back in the game, bitches. Yeah. But for the most part, I choose not to do that with my time. I much prefer meeting with the killers and like helping them solve their problems, talk through, you know, marketing strategies like X, Y, and Z. That's where I prefer to spend my time.
Yep. Love it. Okay. So then, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because I wanted to, you know, kind of get clarity on the journey and you know, what you've been, you know, through that. Well, let's go into this real quick. How has your life changed? Like, do you regret the decision of not running the traditional team? You know, like what has been the differences as far as like just quality of life,
Oh my God.
you know, and income opportunities too, you know, right? So for somebody that's maybe, because like you said, it's so hard to almost detach from that ego of I've got all this time in there. Plus again, the ego of I got this, I want to build this mega team and get these awards. Okay, maybe you got to give up some of that, you know, but what has been the overall payoff?
Oh my God. That is so funny that you say that, because there was an identity crisis involved in there where it's like, dude, I didn't even realize how tied up my entire identity was within real estate. And I got to this point, I was like, who is Shelby? Like without real estate, like it was a whole thing. Talk conversation for another day. But my life is night and day different. And the thing that I love about it most is that I got to keep the parts that I loved most, which was like truly helping those who want to help themselves.
Yeah.
And I got to release from those people who I cared more than they did. I cared way more than they did. You know, some of those people at the end of the team run. My life is a lot different now too, because I felt so responsible for everyone else's happiness and their success and their livelihood. And it just felt amazing to be able to take that weight of responsibility, which was my own problem. I didn't have to feel that way, but I just cared so hard, and be able to readjust where that weight was. And then be able to say, here's everything I know, and sink or swim, it's on you. You know, maybe that sounds bad, but those are the, like, I love it.
Yep. No, I mean, but I mean, you can't help somebody that doesn't want to help themselves.
Totally.
You know? So then it frees up that time and that mental energy and that focus to go out there and help those people that truly, you know, want the help and are going to run with it.
Exactly.
Okay. So I know we're kind of all over the place here, but I want to circle back.
I love it. I'm having fun.
Yeah. I want to circle back to, Pints and Properties.
Yeah.
You know, and whether it be, you know, an investment group or other groups, you know, because networking groups can be so powerful. You know, what are some things that you've learned for those that are watching, listening to this, you know, in the industry, if they want to go out there and start their own networking group, like what does it take and what are things that you learned as far as structure and how frequent to meet up and what to do and how to facilitate them, you know, for people to go out there and have success with their own networking groups?
Yes, it's so funny you say that, because I'm like trying to pull up my slides right now. I recently was at the Real Estate Rockstars Mastermind. Are you familiar with Real Estate Rockstars?
Like the podcast?
Yeah.
Well, I was. My buddy Pat Hyben used to own it before he sold it. Yeah, I don't know who he sold it to, but I was, you know, when like I was on there with Pat, and I've known Pat for years, but I don't know who owns it now. I know he sold it a couple years ago.
Yeah, Aaron Amugasagi.
Okay.
Who's like a super cool dude. But he did his first like Real Estate Rockstars in-person mastermind 2 years ago, and it was great. And so last year I went for the second time and I got to speak, and my topic was Pints and Properties. Yeah. So as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, I have an answer for this. Okay, but I'm going to try. I'm not going to go through like the actual slides. But there are like a ton of amazing reasons why starting a meetup, whether it's investor meetup or otherwise, is like insanely helpful to your business, because I see it as like an in-person drip campaign. It's like you get to market on social media and everyone who you talk to, and all it is like asking, you know, come to a free event, come hang out with me, grab a beer, let's learn some things, like it'll be fun. And it's not salesy. It's not like, I want to sell you a house. It's like, come on, dude, let's hang out and learn something. And then you can push that on social media in a non-salesy way. When you show up in person, you are solidifying the fact that you are the subject matter expert for real estate within your market. And you just, over time, because of the consistency, build such a large, eat such a large part of the market share, the brain space within the people in that market. But yeah, so I have done it once a month since August of 2018. And I guess what was your actual questions before I just rambled in?
Just, for those that are wanting to start a meetup group.
Yeah.
Like just, things that you've learned through the journey of what are important things, whether it's investor related or not. Like I have people I know crushing it with wine tasting groups and crushing it with real estate through the wine, what are things that you have found just foundationally that are really important, whether it be frequency or ways to structure the group or certain things, I'm sure that you've had a lot of learning curves.
Oh my God, so many learning curves. Okay. So the planning stage, very important. So I like to do my planning once a year because I want to do things once and then have it run and not have to think about it once a month. So when you're starting a meetup, you're going to pick a venue, right? And ideally you're going to have the same venue every month. And I'm adamant on the fact that it should be free. Lots of people are like, oh, I don't want to do a meetup because I don't want to spend $250 for, the venue every month. But if you can articulate the value to whoever's having that brewery, the venue, wherever you may choose, and let them choose. Like I asked them, what's your slowest day? What's the day that you wish that you had business on? And if they're still pushing back, it's like, if I could guarantee 5-star reviews on Google every single meetup, would that be something that you're interested in? And all of a sudden, and you can also show pictures of other successful events if you're, are doing a Pints, which is free, by the way, Pints of Property, start one. So the venue is one piece, and then speakers are optional, but I really like the idea of having a speaker. And that is another thing that I do in the planning phase, which is 12 months out. And I have a list. All of this is checklist. I already have all the checklists in the Google Drive and everything. So I have a list of if you don't know who to choose for your first 12 meetups, first year of meetups, let me know. But yeah, and then you're going to add it all to the calendar, send the speakers invites along with the venue. So that way that piece, the planning piece is done, right? And then the next piece would be the marketing. So marketing is social media, every Facebook group online, every city has a, Charlotte real estate investors, Charlotte off-market deals, Charlotte, blah, blah, blah. So literally just spend or hire a VA to search all of the real estate investors meetups on Facebook and then paste, also on Bigger Pockets, depending on what your actual event focus is, who your target is. And then all of your vendors too. If you're an agent, you're damn right, your lender and your closing attorney, your inspector, all these people need to be marketing. Go back to core advocates, right? Okay, I'm gonna take a breath because I'm fucking rambling. And do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, no, I love it.
Okay, great. So that is the marketing piece. The key with marketing though, before I move on, is you have to create FOMO. That is the biggest thing. And you have to believe in your meetup that it's going to be fun, because if you have reservations, people will smell that from a freaking mile away, and no one wants to go to a freaking lame ass meetup. Right. So, and it doesn't have to be that cool. You just have to be excited about it. But every piece of that, the planning and the marketing can be templated as well. There's one post that you think through one time that you post every single month. It's same with the canned emailed reminders for once you have people sign in, you're sending the same shit every month. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So the next piece is execution. Sign in, obviously mandatory, because why are you doing a meetup if you're not collecting their data, right? And then also, it is your job to play host. This is, in my opinion, you are the one who sets the tone for your meetup. If you're fun, if you're having fun, taking pictures, creating the FOMO, sharing on socials, have music in the background, it's going to be a fun event. And then making sure that you capitalize on introducing the speaker, because that is your chance to say, hey, I'm Shelby and I'm a real estate agent here in Charlotte, and I would love to help you. I am your person. That's your chance, which some people are nervous about. Yeah. And then after that follow-up, right? You have the sign-in sheet, you're going to add it to your CRM, or if you're tech savvy, it's going to automatically go there. Thanks for coming, send out the slides, and then they're your people. You can add them to like a 36 touch if you want to, and all the things. And that's like in a nutshell.
Yep. That's awesome. No,
Okay.
that's brilliant. So, how long did it take you to start getting traction? I know that you mentioned, okay, first one was, 4 total people,
Or,
and then how long, because, and the reason why I'm asking this is,
yeah.
we've all heard the story and Think and Grow Rich of stopping 3 feet short of gold. A
Yes.
lot of people just don't give things enough time,
Yeah.
to really pan out, so how long did it take before it was like, okay, more and more people started showing up, led to eventual business?
Yeah. Time for sure. Yeah. I would say that you need to give it like at least 6 months. I usually tell people a year. I'm like, you need to fucking try this for an entire year, and you need to actually put effort into it and actually care. Because again, if you don't care, no one else is going to, and they're not going to show up, and you'll be like, well, it didn't work, you know? So for me, it was a little less than 6 months is when we had like a chunk. And then, by the time I left Fayetteville to move to Charlotte, there were consistently 60 people, 70 people at this meetup, which is exciting.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like you mentioned, I mean, any meetups can be great, but one thing I've always loved about investors is, I mean, it's multiple acquisitions, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that's brilliant. Okay. Anything that we're missing there? Anything that's important for people to tell about meetup groups before I move on?
Yes. Looking back now, when people are like, why is it nationwide now? That just seems silly. Lots of people create meetups and it's not nationwide. And I think it's a big part of it was that my best friend at the time was a professional photographer. And there is nothing that creates FOMO like some high quality photos online that are shared by a bunch of people. Like that. And I'm not saying like it's annoying because it's like, oh, I don't want to hire a photographer. And I'm not telling you to. I'm just saying that looking back now, don't discount quality content because it does amazing things for you on the internet.
Yeah. I love that. So then, all right. So then, trying to reference my notes here to circle back here. Okay. So I do want to talk a little bit about your social media game.
Mm-hmm.
What it looked like in the beginning, what it looks like now of really
Yeah.
working with social CRM, because a lot of people they know, if you look at just Facebook alone, almost 3 billion monthly active users today.
Yeah.
People think like, oh, it's getting oversaturated. No, dude, these things are just getting started.
Totally.
So what does that look like? What did that look like? What are top recommendations, to really, if we're looking at treating these as a social CRM?
Yeah. So back in the day, I had no strategy. Again, just starting out, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying things, right? And what I did is I just shared the journey. I did not create any content that was educating, or this is what you do to buy a house, or call me as your realtor. Like that wasn't what I did. I really just shared my own personal journey on posts, but also consistently on stories, and tagged a lot of people, including, Bigger Pockets, and everything was like geo tagged, I guess, is that the type of word? Like everything was Fayetteville. So back at the time, like I was all on the social media. And when you'd go to the Fayetteville, like if you search Fayetteville, North Carolina, my face was everywhere on that shit. So I don't think that I did anything fancy. Like I literally would just share what I was doing, and I would try to make it as interesting as possible. Like I would walk a house and it would be like, if it was a piece of shit or whatever, I would like find where there was like duct tape around the plumbing, and it'd be like, yo, like excellent plumbing job, like just little stuff like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, Gary Vee says, document, don't create.
Yeah.
So you're out there documenting, all the things that you're doing, and you're creating that omnipresence, because it's so brilliant, back in the day, I'm kind of aging myself here, but when I got into this business, dude, there was no YouTube, there was no social media, there were no podcasts, nothing, like we had like talk radio, and you had, people actually went to but I used to have to spend like 60 grand a month between radio and TV, and to create that same omnipresence that now you can do for free,
For free,
you know,
yeah.
or very low cost, you know, for paid ads, like with awareness ads, you know, it just blows my mind why people don't leverage these tools that are out there,
Totally.
you know? So then, okay, so what did it look like? Cause you have some that follow, okay, well, you know, like, you don't want to just make it all about business. You also want to get people to know you and like you as a person.
Yeah.
You know, do you
I'm a believer.
intertwine in personal stuff plus business stuff so it just isn't burning people out with so much business?
Dude, totally. And yes, I shared a lot of like, you know, I was super big in CrossFit back then, and I still am. I just like don't compete. Like I'm not as brainwashed as I used to be. But I would do a lot about, you know, CrossFit, but I would usually tie them to, you know, social to real estate in some sort of way where it's like, if it's like food and it's like fueling up for a day of showings, or like, you know, strong mind, strong body, like type of shit. I also did like a bunch of like motivational stuff, but for me it just felt like an extension of self. Like I wasn't like, oh shit, what do I post today? It was like literally what I'm doing, and extended that to the universe. So yes, and I am a big believer in humans. You know, over time, all they want is stories. Like they're captivated by stories. I'm captivated by stories. Like I want to know, and half the time I do think that I'm like, dude, what did you have for breakfast? I want to know how many hours you slept last night. Like I need to know these things, you know?
Yep. Yep. 100%. So then, all right, so when you're scaling that fast, you know, 40 deals, 120 to 230 to, you know, your next year, you're on track to do, you know, what, 350, you know, what were some of the hard things? Because people don't understand growing pains until you experience them. Sometimes growing pains are worse than slow pains. Like what were some of those, you know, hard things to, you know, because sometimes it could be the analogy I always think of is like in the movies when you got the kid like at the wheel, but they can barely see over the steering wheel and you're barely holding on. It kind of feels like that sometimes.
Yeah. Dude, there were so many hard things. Everything was hard. There was nothing easy about any of it. I say one of the hardest things was the fact that you can't train what you've learned through experience. And I know that there is training that you can do and you can tell someone something, but they don't get it. They don't know until they've suffered and lived the pain themselves. And that was really hard for me because I was trying my best to like train these agents on like everything that I had learned, you know, and I wanted them to know it so desperately. And they'd be like, I got it. But you can't get it. You have to live it. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, there's that. I don't know who originally said it, but that, you know, whatever. It's a
Some dude
quote out there, but yeah, it's, you know, the student appears when the teacher's ready, or the teacher appears when the student's ready.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So that was very difficult. Another thing that was difficult for me, dude, it's hard to even, and I guess a lot of it just goes back to what I said before, where it's like and we were attracting so many new agents. And it was just really hard to train and keep standards. And yeah, dude, I don't really have a great answer.
Yeah. Yep. Now, were you doing also like traditional like lead gen stuff too? Like, were you buying leads, paying for leads?
Dude, it's so funny you say that because, okay, to fill you in, last year, in 2022 was the first year that I had ever paid for any sort of marketing or taken marketing seriously, which just blows my mind looking back now. And it wasn't even an agent stuff. Like last year, my husband and I decided that we were going to do some direct to seller marketing, try to do some wholesaling, some flips. And so we started heated, really digging into like all of these different marketing strategies. You know, we did paid ads on Facebook. We did a ton of direct mail. We did the cold color from the Philippines. Like we did all of the things. And looking back now, when I look at my team, I'm like, I cannot believe we never paid for a lead. And it was because that was the piece of the puzzle that I was super blind to. That's something that I think is interesting too, is like, we only know from our experiences. And my experience was I had leads from the beginning. And whenever I had some person who was interested, I closed them. So in my mind, I was like, leads aren't hard. You just talk to 5 people and then you close a bunch of deals. Like, what are you talking? That's not the hard part. Like, let's focus on all the operational, all that shit. And so even on the team, I was like, hey, lead gen is your responsibility. Go out and talk to some people. I'll give out all the leads that I can, but that was never a huge piece of the puzzle. And knowing what I do now, I'm actually going through this like massive deep dive into all of the different ways to lead gen. And I'm taking them and building out like an all-in-one platform. This is like, you're first to hear it. But for like agents who come into our world to do marketing, sales, and delivery, and like those 3 chunks to build the machine. And all that to say, the marketing piece is my biggest interest right now because it's something that I never struggled with throughout my experiences.
Yep. Love it. So then, I'm curious, I know things are different today, because you have the right leverage pieces, and I'm sure you still work your ass off today, but, in those early years, because you said something earlier of, what it actually takes, like people willing to do what it actually takes. A lot of people want to succeed in this business, but they don't necessarily know what it actually takes. So like that first year, second year, whatever, like what did your typical day look? I mean, I know what it took me to go out there and do 48 deals in my first year,
blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. So what did that look like? So for those who are like, hey man, I want to grow this, like, okay, like here's what that freaking takes. Here's like what an average day look like.
Yeah. I woke up at 4 a.m. every single day for years. I still sometimes today I woke up at 4 a.m. And the reason why is because I had to have those hours of work before anyone else woke up in order to get it all done. And even to the point, I didn't even have time to get it all done. But okay, to bring it back, in the beginning, when I first got started, it was a lot of like high anxiety because I didn't know what the fuck to do with my time, but I knew I needed to be doing something. So I just attacked everything that came my way as aggressively as I could. I also I like stalked the top 5 performing agents at their Keller Williams market. And I just like borderline harassed them until I could like ride in the car with them to listing appointments, like just sit in their house and listen to them on the phone, like that whole thing until I figured out kind of what I was doing ish. But there was just such an intense urgency behind every single day. I would wake up on fire with, I have to make this work and I'm going to fill every second of my day with some sort of productive activity. And that's what my life consisted of. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like any second that I felt like if I was just like scrolling aimlessly or like doing anything, I would literally like yell at myself, which I'm not saying this is healthy activity. I'm just, I'm telling you what it was, what it had, and like literally had to make every moment productive.
Yep. No, I love it. Yeah. I think we as a society become way too soft. Like you're like, oh, I don't think this is a healthy work ethic. I'm like, nah, I think it's about right.
Yeah, dude, I'm with you.
I mean, if you want to create something great, creating something great isn't for everybody. If you want to go work your 40 hours a week and have your 2 days off a week and, then cool, go. There's a lot of places for that gig, but just your income is going to probably be mediocre for the rest of your life, right? Like, what do you want?
I agree.
So then at what point did you get, you talked about, Robert Kiyosaki, even back before you actually started as a realtor. So at what point did you get involved in the investment game?
Before getting my license, even.
Okay.
Yeah. So I got out of the Army in 2018. That was my first year as an agent. It was November of 2017 when I purchased my first intentional investment property. I had my primary residence that I had bought back in the day in my Army first duty station. But yeah, I bought a duplex in 2017, and a year forward, I had 16 doors in my portfolio. They weren't 16 individual purchases. I had a duplex, one single, and then another duplex and a 6-unit, and a quad. That was like, I'm missing one. So yeah, that was kind of like year one. And then after year one, I got into like I guess I've been in the burst strategy since the beginning, but I don't know. What direction do you want to take this?
Yeah. Well, no, I want to, I mean, we'll talk about like just what your journey's been, but then also I'd love to, also, I think most people, at least not actually, I think most of my conversations with most in this industry, you know, when we get dive deep into it, it's like they would love to become their main primary client. You know, right? Like
Sure.
meaning owning a bunch of rental properties, not having to work. Like if you want to go out there and sell, it's because you can, not that you have to.
Totally.
You know, so then you acquired 74 total rentals within your
Yes.
first 3 years of doing this.
Yes. Some more
Um,
partnerships, and they, you know, I had multis in there as well. So
Okay.
it always sounds cooler than it is, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then I sold off some during the peak, and I'm down. I'm at 45 now, and I'm here to stay. So.
Okay. So here to stay, meaning just temporarily until we see what the hell's going to shake out with this economy and market, or just like, hey, we're good here. We just want to focus on building the downline.
Yes, the second. Yeah,
Okay.
at this point I have I don't really have any interest in acquiring more. I do think, you know, I might want to do like the shred method. Don't know if I want to go that direction. So I'll bring it back. Right now, I don't want to acquire more. That may change down the road. I really do think that, like, I got started investing in late 2017, 2018. Amazing. Dude, I was scooping foreclosures off the market for 40 grand. I'd put 15,000 into them. They'd be worth, you know, 90, or it rent for 1,000. Like, those are stupid numbers. And so now it's like, it's hard to want to play in today's game, especially when like I don't have the sense of urgency in that direction of my life. But if/when the times change, I'll be ready.
Yeah. Yeah. When you can get 10, 20% cap rates again, when you can. Yeah. Okay. So if the climate was right and you were able to go out there and buy back in those days and get those same cap rates and same returns, then you'd want to re-enter.
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Yep. Yep. All right. So if somebody's listening and watching this that is just getting started, has zero investment properties,
Yes.
you know, because like, look, in real estate, like meaning as real estate professionals, not on the investment side, it's like, you know, okay, we're here to make our income, but then you got to do something with that income. You got to have some type of wealth building strategy, whatever that is, whether you want to put in the stock market or real estate or build businesses, but like you gotta have some type of wealth building strategy to place that income,
100%.
you know? So, okay, like, but they haven't started yet. Like, what do you recommend they start? How did you get your start? What do you recommend they get their start?
When people get started, I always recommend, okay, I hate the word always. It depends on their situation and it depends on their market. In my experience, I've worked with a lot of single dudes in the military who have access to the VA loan. And I'm like, y'all, stop with your whatever you're trying to flip, we're trying to burn, we're trying to do fancy stuff. Go out and buy with your VA loan and house hack. Either buy a nice house, whatever, live in one part of the house, rent out the rooms, or buy a duplex, a triplex, or a quad, live in one, rent out the others. If you want to get fancy, sure, short-term rental, like do an Airbnb in one of your units or but like that is such a great way for people to get started, whether it's the VA loan or FHA or USDA, whatever primary residence is, a freaking do it now, in my opinion.
Yep. Yep. Love it. Love it. So then what do you see, like, what's your long-term vision? You know, because I mean, you mentioned that your focus is really building, the rev share, I don't know, 10, 20 years from now, like what's your long-term vision for this thing? How big do you want to take it?
It is so funny that you ask that, because historically in my life to date, I have thought in very short-term horizons, like let's just get the next 3 months, 6 months, next year, that sort of thing. And I just kind of sketched out the next 10 years, which includes staying on the track in the world that I am in now. To be honest, I can't look out further than that. Yep. And I don't know what it looks like, but I do know that retirement is boring and I do not like being stagnant. It's like evolve or die, right? So if I'm not, and I mean this in all friends, I mean it like physically, if I'm not like pushing myself at the gym and if I'm not like finding out, different ways to be healthier, more energized, all of that stuff. And then also in business, like I constantly want to be growing, creating, and developing because I feel like shit if I don't. So I don't know what it looks like in 20 years, but I do know that I will not be, so I don't know what it looks like in 20 years, but I do know that it will not be sitting on a couch watching Netflix.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. What fun is that, dude?
Boring as shit.
And I think some people can't relate because they're so miserable, like with their day to day, and they hate their job, but what's cool is when you figure out how to make money at what you love doing and the way that you love doing it, like you've been able to do. I know that there's that cliche saying out there of you never, find what you love and you never work a day in your life, but dude, there's a lot of truth to that.
Totally.
I contemplated retirement about 2 years ago. I just had turned 40, so I'm 41 now, but but I was just turning 40 and I was like, well, like what direction do I want to go with? Like, if I don't make a pivot now, I was like, all right, like, been doing this since I was 23. I'm like, what does this look like? And, but then, I just started asking myself those hard questions of, okay, like if I did retire, what would I do with my time? I'm like, I'd be doing all the same shit. Like this I'm like, I'd still podcast. I'm like, I'd just maybe fly around a little bit more and speak a little bit more at real estate events. I'm like, but it's essentially, I'm like, I'm just replicating the same shit I'm doing right now. Why not just keep doing more of what I'm already doing?
Dude, I'm 100% with you. And I had that conversation after, when I was deciding what to do with the team. Like I really did. At that point, I was so burnt out. I was like, fuck all the shit. Like I'm shutting it all down. Like I'm literally going to move to Jamaica. No one's ever hear from me again, or wherever. And then I was like, but what would I do? And like, I came to the exact same conclusion that you did, where it's like, if I did not have what, has been built so far and what has, a very beautiful trajectory, I would be trying to recreate that, so where I learned from it.
Yep. 100%. So a couple last questions for you, but before we get into those, for anybody that's watching and listening, if anybody wants to, continue to follow you on this amazing success journey that you're on, or maybe, we're all, attached to the real estate industry here. Maybe they want to talk to you about an opportunity to work with you, join your downline, have access to all the amazing stuff that you have. Where's the best place for people to follow you, to get in touch with you, all of that?
Yeah, on Instagram, dude, come hang out with me. I want messages like, who I want to talk to are like people who want to like take over the world, like the badasses, the killers, who have like that fire within. And if you're not that, that's okay too. I also want to talk to you, but like, I don't know. So hit me up on Instagram. It's the Shelby Show. Would love to hear from you and hang out with you, but also bemore-agents.com is our website. So, and I was actually wondering, is it Be More behind your head right now? Dude, get the fuck out.
Yeah, it's actually same. So I had this tattooed on like 6 years ago. I had brought in my tattoo artist and I got tattooed live on a podcast. So I'm interviewing her about building her tattoo business because she's just a badass. But then live on we actually did the tattoo while we were interviewing, and so. Dude,
that is so funny. Look.
Boom, that's it. Yep. I love it.
Yeah, Be More on my, like that's like been our little tag. Now I feel we're the same. We're same.
Yeah. When I just learned it from, just all my years of just binging everything Jim Rohn ever came out with. But he's like, hey man, you want more, you got to become more, and it's just hearing that become more. It's just in my mind. It was just always, okay, like if I want more, I got to be more. And so just a constant thing in my head, and then I was like, well, just kind of became my own internal slogan.
Dude, I love that. And I love how you are just talking about like, if you want it in your head, feed it to yourself on repeat. Like that's super fucking cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I'm a big believer in vision boards. I've even like, all my tattoos essentially, which I don't recommend people to go out and do this, but I'm like, my whole body's a vision board. Yeah. Like I have everything, like just daily reminders, and they have a certain reason for, but yeah, I just keep that shit front of mind, out of sight, out of mind, so you gotta be intentional, know what you want, keep it front of mind, and then make congruent actions and decisions
in alignment.
Yep.
Yeah, dude, love.
Yeah. So then, okay. So a lot of people in this industry, it's so easy because it is such a crazy industry, such a reactive industry. It's very difficult to take care of life and health and things outside of this industry. I know most people are listening to this on audio. We get about 20 times the amount of audio downloads than we do on YouTube. But anybody that's watching this can see that you're in great shape. I'm looking at your delts. I'm like, damn, this chick is jacked. Thank you. So how do you, I hate the word balance because it doesn't always exist, from like 8 hours sleep, 8 hours of work, 8 hours of leisure time, but how do you still maintain and make sure to, because I mean, you're married, you know, you've got, you know, your health in order. Like how do you make sure you're not dropping those balls on those important things and just allowing your business to completely suck you in?
Yeah, by changing your habits and by tricking yourself that you don't have a choice. Okay, I'll go into to those two things. For habits, for me, fitness has been a bit, I was a competitive gymnast growing up, and then I went into the military, and fitness has just always been a part. And there are times where I have fallen off, and kind of like what we talked about earlier with retirement, it's just like, I feel like shit. And you don't realize how good you feel when you're taking care of your fitness if you don't, because the other feeling becomes your normal. Like if you don't know what it's like to eat healthy consistently and work out consistently and get good sleep, you don't even know how good you could be feeling, you know? And so, yeah, just realizing that I don't want to feel like shit. That's one piece. Also, like who is around you is so important. Like my husband is always on 75 hard. I feel like he just lives there. That's his constant state. But it does make it a lot easier when the person that you want to be is what's expected from the people that you surround yourself with.
Yep.
Like it's so hard when we go on family vacations because we just actually get like shit talk from the family, like, you know, about drinking and food and wanting to go on a run in the morning. And I'm just like, oh, and I love my family. Shout out if you're listening. But it is, you do have to be, if you want something, you do have to be really aware of the feedback in your life and what it is doing to your actions. And then the other thing I was mentioning about like giving yourself a choice, like when you fall off, which I did, I have before, the journey to get back on, or maybe the journey to get started is filled with this like asshole in your head. They are very convincing. And they say, you don't need to go today. You could just go on a walk, or, oh, it's a rest day every day. Or, you have to, what worked for me is by just saying, shut the fuck up and do it. Like, I don't have a choice. There's not an option not to go. And then it just becomes a habit and you don't think about it anymore. You just wake up and you're like, put on your gym shit and you go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And then you get to a point, it's funny because it's like every time like we, you know, I don't go out of town or go on a vacation, like the thing I'm always most excited about is to get home to my regular food and my regular routine.
Totally.
You know, right? Like you get to a point where you enjoy it and you love it, you know.
Exactly.
I guess at least I have. I mean, some people maybe not, but you know, then from there, you know, because so many people are like, well, I just don't have the time, you know. But I guess, you know, I guess that, yeah.
Okay. It's if you don't, yeah, it's you, everyone has the same amount of hours. And if you say you don't have the time, just change the sentence and say, it's not a priority to me, and see how that feels, because that's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know?
When I always tell people too, and I mean, you have a ton of energy, you know, right? So, but it's like, dude, like taking the extra hour out of my day to work out creates more time. You know, and not just the workout, also the diet, you know, but I'm like, dude, like if you eliminate brain fog, if you have an abundance of mental and physical energy, you know, and that's a combination of the diet and workout, but I'm like, dude, I hack time. Yeah, I might have 1 hour less of work time because of that, you know, but man, I've hacked I'm so much more, I get so much more shit done.
I love that you just said the brain fog, because that's one too. My roommate who does 75 hard all the time, when the diet is really our normal now. It started out as 75 hard, which is where we cut anything that was like processed essentially. So it's like if it grew from the ground or if it was killed, then we can eat it, and it like no extra ingredients, like all of that stuff, and no alcohol. But it's wild after you do that for a while and then you go back and you eat pizza, which I love. Don't get me wrong. I fucking love pizza. But now I'll only eat pizza if it's like a Friday night or like a Saturday night or something, not when I feel like I need to get shit done the next day. Cause I know I'm going to be sluggish. I'm going to be, you know, my brain is just going to be a piece of shit. So that's one of those things too, where it's like, if you can detach from that old norm, you find a new norm and then you love it so much that you don't want to go back.
Yep. Yeah. Do you ever feel like though and I guess this comes around to surrounding yourself. You talked about surrounding yourself with people, but it's like, okay, there was a period of time because I don't drink either. And I'm sitting like one ingredient foods and,
Yeah.
so I'm driving down the car
Dude,
the
we
other
are
day.
same.
Yeah. I need to move to North Carolina and hang out with you and your husband.
Yeah.
But I'm, because I've done 75 hard a couple of times, and I'm driving to my son though. I don't know, something came up about 75 hard. And I was telling my wife and my kids were in the car with us. I'm like, for everybody that I hire going forward for any future leadership position, be like a test, a mandate is going to have to get through 75 hard. Because I'm like, if they can't get through that, because it's, it's a physical, but it's really a mental challenge. I mean, if they can't get through that, they're going to be too weak mentally to come work for me. So then my kids started asking a couple questions, but then my son goes like, don't you just do that every day anyway? And I'm like, well, outside of the one workout won't always be outside, and I don't take a daily picture of myself, but outside of that, I'm like, yeah, it's just a lifestyle, right?
Exactly.
But there was, so every 6 months, I learned this from my business mentor, Darren Hardy. He's like, okay, every 6 months, give up something that you love or something that you've grown accustomed to. And this is always just flexing that discipline muscle to show and prove to yourself that you are in control and nothing's in control of you. So, okay, I do it with caffeine or I do it with certain things. Well, then it just became, I was just following the process. Nothing was a challenge anymore.
Yeah.
So now this was a couple of years ago, but I was like, okay, I'm going to give up. What would be that next challenge? I'm like, I'm going to give up my smartphone for 6 months.
Shit.
So I went back to an old school flip phone, and there's a lot of positives, that came out of that, but one thing I realized at that point, because, okay, now I can't be on my phone. I'm not drinking. I'm not eating bullshit. So I felt like I was living I felt like I was like a human being all by myself on this planet. Like everything, you're just like, holy shit. Like you're just observing. Yeah. Do you ever feel that way of like just because everybody operates so differently?
I do. I have not given up the phone, which I do think would be like, I got to think on that. And I might want to do that because I do agree with like with the stuff we feed ourselves, not just food wise, but like, the stuff that we intake. And then I look around and you're right. I do sometimes, feel that island thing, but I cannot imagine if I like took the phone out of it, that would be like 10x that feeling. So fuck, dude.
The only reason I went back because I really loved not having it. But then, my daughter got to the age, I have a 14-year-old daughter.
Gotcha.
And now so we decided to get her a phone. Because she's in competitive cheer and stuff. And we're like, well, we got to drop her off at these places, these events. Like, we need to have a way for her to communicate with us.
Totally.
So then it was like, okay, the one person I wanted to text and be able to text back and forth with, now I can't text her. So because you remember the old phones, like the flip phones, like you have to hit the thing 3 times to get so like to text, hey, how's your day going? Would take me like 5 minutes. I'm like, this sucks. And then when you travel, like it's very pictures. It's an impossibility. Well, I didn't care about the photos.
Okay.
I mean, it did hurt my social media game a little bit, but whatever, there's workarounds for that. Because I could just go get one of these without service and then take all the photos and then I could just use it as a camera, right? Yeah. So when I had Wi-Fi, but then dude, like not being able to get an Uber. Shit. Like it's hard to operate in taxis and so like certain areas like just didn't, and have to go to the hotel and ask and people didn't understand. I'm like, dude, I don't have a phone. I don't have an app. I don't have I need you.
They're like, quit fucking with me. Yes, you do.
Yeah. So, but again, if it wasn't for the texting thing, but now, she's so busy with her friends and we're like, she doesn't text dad.
She doesn't care about it.
I'm going to back.
Dude, that's okay. So something that I really love that you said though, is like, not getting attached, like the phone is an exercise for like not getting attached or, just the idea. I really like the idea of like not getting shaken by the obstacles that come. Okay. For example, like if I used to not have my miracle morning in the mornings, like if I didn't get my X amount of hours of sleep and do my miracle morning, like my day would be like fucked. You know what I mean? Like in a way, but I love what you're saying where you're talking about like changing it up and making sure that you are strong enough in any environment to, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I think that's fucking cool.
Yep. So then, all right. So, Well, I lied. Yeah, I do have, I said only two last questions for you, but I have two more.
Okay.
All right. So you mentioned, and this is just a selfish question because,
Sure.
all right, so when you reached out to me, you reached out on Instagram.
Yes.
You know, right. Well, like I'm not heavy on Instagram, but I'm getting heavier into it. But dude, the
Sure.
comments and the questions, I find it so hard to navigate.
Mm.
You know, like how do you, if you have so many people reaching out on Instagram, you know, do you use a different system to manage the comments and not comments, well, I mean comments, but then the messages that come in, you know, or are you just doing everything in the app?
Okay. So everything that I do in my life has to be operational on a desktop. So Instagram messages, desktop, like comments, everything desktop, because I can type so much faster than I can. And every time I pick up the phone, for one thing, it's 30 minutes later and I'm like, why did I pick up the phone? Like what, you know what I mean? So the phone is the devil for me. So I do use the desktop to reply to things. I did just come off like a year's worth of not being on socials pretty much at all. So I am not at my like heaviest, you know, engagement phase. But if I ever did get like, yeah, no, I don't know. I think the desktop is the only way that I would say.
Yeah.
Because I still want to reply, you know, like I want it to be me.
Yeah. Yeah. Like in Facebook Business Manager, they made it really nice where you can now manage all of your Facebook comments, all of your Facebook business messages and your Instagram messages, but then it doesn't pull through the requests. So if we aren't already connected on there. So like, okay, with yours, I didn't know that that was sitting in there until you made the comment, you know, and then I go in there and it's like outside of your message, it's just like 10,000 other people trying to
spam you.
Yeah, like, you know, hey,
yeah.
dude, you want me to edit your short form content for you? I'm like, dude, like, just go freaking edit a video, send it to me. And if it's dope, then maybe I'll hire you. You know, right?
Totally.
It's like, you know,
yeah,
it blows my mind. But
well, I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, no,
this has been really fun.
Yeah. Then I read your bio. I'm like, hell yeah, I gotta have you on, dude. This is awesome. But I love too how, and that's just another example of how you are somebody, and I think that this is just what it takes to have success in business. But you are somebody that when you know what you want, like you play offense.
Oh, right? Like 100%.
You know, like I can't tell you how many goals people have like, oh, I've had a goal of being on your podcast, you know, and you know, like 5 years later, like I'll reach out to him because they get on my radar and I reach out to him like, oh, I've always had a goal. I'm like, why didn't you reach out? I would have had you on 2 years ago. Like,
yeah,
you just asked, you know,
yeah. Right? My dad would always say, Shelby, the answer is always no unless you ask. Literally, he'd like make me go ask for discounts. I was 7. Like,
yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah, no, I love it. Okay, so if Shelby today, knowing everything that you know now, if you could go back and you're sitting on a park bench, and you're having a conversation with your younger self and you know, your 2018 self when you first entered this industry, knowing everything you know now today, and you could give yourself a couple pieces of advice that you wished you would have known, what would that look like today?
Oh my God, dude, I got this answer. Fucking luxury. So I just recently got connected with this guy named Jordan Cohen. He has like 527,000 followers on Instagram. It's crazy. And all he does, he's been doing it for 33 years, but he sells luxury homes and he sells, you know, a bunch of homes for sure, but he makes like $7.5 million per year as opposed selling the same amount of homes, you know, that I did my first year, and I made $150,000 with the average sales price of $145,000, and his average sales price is like 7 million. So that was just a huge, and people tell you that, and you know, like, oh, just sell more expensive homes, but like in the time, like I wasn't open to hearing it, and now, and the reason why too is because if you're doing the same amount of work and making way more money, then you have all of the money is the biggest problem with like investing. At least it was in my day. I was like, where am I going to get this money? And I was using private money and hard money and lines of credit and all this fucking creative shit. But like, if I just took the same amount of effort and energy, close bigger deals, boom, I don't know.
leverage piece, you know. Yep. No, love it. Powerful stuff. Yeah. And I think too, you know, maybe we don't want to admit it to ourselves, but it's subconsciously, maybe it's the fear or totally. Like nobody's going to list a home, you know, $6 million home with me when I'm brand new, I'm young, I'm right. You know, so there's that probably element of 100%. Fear too.
Yes. Yep. And yeah. but they're just people too.
Yep. That's it. Yep. 100%. All right. So can you repeat one more time the website and your Instagram handle just for anybody, just in case they're, driving down the road and they didn't catch it the first time?
Absolutely. It is the Shelby Show on Instagram, and it's bemore-agents.com.
Be more.
those are the
I
two.
love it. Love it. And we say dash, not an underscore.
Dash. Yeah.
Perfect.
Dash it
All
up.
right. Yeah.
Cool.
Now this has been awesome, Shelby. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here. This has been so much fun.
Likewise, dude. I loved hanging with you. Thanks
Yep.
for having me on.
Yeah, 100%. Those watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate you. Truly appreciate our support. Keep crushing it, and we will see you next time. Peace.